Welcome to ClickPoint, where we explore how this powerful combination transforms lives across industries like education, technology, venture capital, and sustainability. Today, we are speaking to Kevin Merges, who is the Chief Global Impact Officer at Saddle River Day School, a really dynamic independent school that's pre-K through 12 in northern New Jersey. One of the really interesting points and conversations that we get into is around innovation, the future of education from a geopolitical perspective. Let's dig in. I'm really happy and fortunate to have this person on the podcast today, because not only is he a brilliant thinker, but he's also an amazing and generous person, and someone I've been really lucky to be friends with for, I think we're going on 10 years at this point, right? Is it 10 years at this point?
Yeah.
For the past decade, which is wild. So I just want to make a couple quick announcements before we dig in. Your wife actually suggested this to us a year ago, that she's like, you guys should just record your conversations and put that out on a podcast. So I'm just going to blatantly acknowledge that I'm taking Amy's idea, and I've just expanded it to other people, not just Kevin. And so I just wanted to say that. And the other thing I was going to say is that actually, as we dig into question number one, the question originally I was going to ask you is, what inspired you to start using technology in your current role? And we were talking about this and we're re-recording. And then what I actually said is you've had a bunch of different roles. And so what I wanted to kick off talking about with you is what inspired you to use technology in whichever role you choose, and how has your use of tech evolved as the different roles that you've had sort of have changed as well?
Thanks for the kind words, and definitely shout out to Amy for the great idea, right? I think that, I 41 years ago, as I was graduating high school, I purchased my first desktop, which was an Apple IIe. I think I was talking to my kids about it. The speed of the modem in the house currently is, I think, at least 1 million times faster than the speed of the modem I had when I got that IIe. So things have changed a little bit. Like the gig factor, right, on a household modem now. And my first one was 200 baud, not,
right,
not meg, not kilo, not, multiple levels of magnitude lower. And so I minored in comp sci and majored in math, but did nothing with it for years. And I went into, I was coaching swimming, and then I went into teaching math, because all my swimmers seemed to have something to do during the day, and that was go to school. So I got a day job and started teaching. You'll probably find this interesting. When iTunes came out and they first put podcasts up, I was trending in the iPod or the iTunes store or whatever, because I was posting quiz reviews as podcasts.
That's right.
Back in back then. And
what is back then? What year was this?
I honestly don't remember, but I'm going to say somewhere about 22 years ago, because I can't remember the pace of change. And I know roughly when I started collecting the bottle caps that had the one free song on iTunes.
Yeah.
And that was, I think, in 98, 99-ish. But then 2000s, and I always mess up the start date on when iPads came out and when iPhones came out and stuff like that.
It all bleeds together now, and there will be people listening to this being like, there was a point where there wasn't iTunes.
Yeah, right. And now it's hard for me. Like I have a lot of music that was purchased through iTunes that I no longer have access to, because it just doesn't work that way anymore. It's all streaming.
That's
interesting. There's and I uploaded it to more than 5 devices or something like that, and I don't own those devices anymore. And
so the music's gone.
Yeah, and it's probably okay because you know me. I listen to Bloomberg. I don't listen to music. Which I know,
we should
for
work
you,
on
the
that.
music
That's a
person,
side note.
yeah.
That's a side note. We have to work on that. I need to start making you mixtapes. This is right. Not actual tapes, but you know what I mean.
Right. Yeah. Mixtapes. What does that even mean? Right.
Exactly.
Right. I did. I was when I moved to New Jersey in 2000. Right around that year or the first year, 2001, somewhere is when the school started a laptop program, and all the teachers got their laptops. Not all the teachers, a lot of the teachers got laptops, and then things, so that gave us a chance to do things. I was always a little fascinated by the web. Like I don't know if I've ever shared it with you. I have a map of the internet from 1986. Which shows every node on the internet, and there were not a lot.
I was going to say the fact that it fits on one paper speaks to how early or like how nascent that map must have been compared to now.
And you couldn't email without knowing the computers it passed through. So I know to email one of my friends who was only on the other side of the river, we had to go through Dartmouth or Yale, which the hub on the East Coast. And there was like 12 computers in a row. And you had to seek with them an at, and then at,
right.
And every college or research lab had like a 6-digit code and stuff like that. And if you didn't know the sequence, your email wasn't going to get there, and now the computer speed is so fast that it doesn't really care. It just looks everywhere and says, "Oh yeah, I'll put it there. It seems to work over here." Yeah. It's, so those kind of things have fascinated me. And I would remember being at ISTE the year that iPads came out because we crashed the network in the convention center. Because everybody showed up with 2 or 3 devices. They had a phone, they had an iPad, and their laptop.
And a laptop,
right. And no conference was ready for that kind of stuff.
Right.
It was crazy talk. To have 3 people, 3 devices per person, that's nuts. Who would do that?
Right.
And then, fast forward another 5 or 10 years and you and I met at a conference. I literally yesterday was talking to somebody about that conference. They had also been at that conference where we met.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It was a little crazy.
Which is only a decade ago, but yeah, keep going.
Yeah, that was the last conference that person went to. So,
well, I mean, it wasn't that far removed from COVID, so that makes sense.
That tells you a lot about independent schools too.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people in independent schools that have not been out.
See, I almost missed that point that you made. And I know that you and I, and you actually for a long time would travel even way more than I would, especially internationally, to go to conferences. But before we get there, I want you to talk about this a little bit, because part of the reason why I was like, hey, I need to speak to Kevin on this podcast is, and I tell you this all the time, but I feel probably 75 to 85% of the interesting ideas that I have around how to utilize technology within school settings come from something that you've said to me.
That's very kind.
I
always think it's the reverse. I think I'm getting all my ideas from you.
Well, this is why it's a beautiful friendship.
Right.
Can you, let's get into this a little bit. I'm sure we'll talk about it more. Talk about how you use technology. And I know some of this stuff is proprietary, some of the stuff is stuff that you're working on, but how do you use technology in your current role? And, because we've gotten like the history of it, but like some of the innovative ways that you are bringing technology into educational spaces and creating opportunities for learning that didn't exist. I'm going to say prior to you, but definitely prior to, prior to this wave that we're going through currently.
Yeah. And, a wave is an interesting, way of describing it, because I do think of this as like, like it's fairly calm and there's a little bit of a wave, not anything you know, some people might be able to begin to surf a little bit on that wave, but we're getting to the point where this is kind of like, oh, we're over on the Honolulu side, and you know, there's these nice waves, and you can take those, you can ride them into the shore or whatever, and soon education is going to move around to the North Shore, and it's not going to be pretty what happens when those waves start rolling in.
Say more. Insane. Say more. Say more.
Yeah. The AI stuff that we see coming in. And so this is, you know, how we rolled it in. We saw that when I moved to my new job, July of 23, first day I was on the job, July 1st, great start. July 2nd, got on a plane, went to India. When we were there, we met with our educational partners, because I think that there's a lot more international education coming. I was, you know me in the stats, right? All
right, hold on. I know you in the stats, but for the purposes of this conversation, you need to act as if I don't know you.
I'll give a couple stats. Sure. Okay.
Thank you. Right. Thank you.
So the land between Pakistan and Vietnam will move about 1 billion people into the middle class during the 2020s, which is a 4x multiplier on the 500 million people that moved into the middle class in China over the time from 2000 to 2020. So that is a huge growth in the middle class. And when countries grow in the middle class, a lot of money goes towards education. And add into that a couple of other stats. By 2050, Nigeria should pass the US as the third largest, most populous country in the world. And by 2100, it's entirely possible that the continent of Africa's population exceeds the continent of Asia. So the dynamics of what's changing in the next 75 years is crazy. When you look at what we do in education, it has to change, right? It's like somebody invented cars, and there's still a lot of places making saddles, which is okay, and we'll need those, but will we need as many saddles as we used to? And I think that's where the schools have to really start to embrace what's happening. I was talking to somebody yesterday who had a student who was in one of those online schools taking an extra class. They turned in an assignment. The assignment was identified as 100% AI generated by the AI checker. The kid swears up and down the street. So for the second, we'll believe the child that they totally wrote it on their own. They did, however, take it and put it into an AI check, to look through it and say, hey, what do you think? But there were no changes made from that. They just kind of ran it through, almost like used it for a grammar check or something, we'll say.
Right. So
it got flagged by the online school, and they could not accept it because it was 100% guaranteed AI. So we have now, and we have this with all AI checkers that I know of. We literally have Reddit forums on how to get around AI checkers. Right? The kids are out there doing this. I think part of it is because a lot of us spend time during secondary school or secondary and elementary school saying using AI is cheating. Then we go to college and we say using AI is cheating. And then the day after you graduate college, you start your job, and 85% of your companies are saying, oh, you have to use this AI. So we're not prepping them for the world they're going into. Another one of my favorite stats is you look at the Wall Street Journal article, and the average tuition for independent schools jumped over 50,000. And that means that there are children who are currently in independent schools. We'll say they're in pre-K, pre-K3, pre-K4, whatever. And by the time they are in 12th grade, their tuition will be $100,000. That's just normal growth.
Like a pre-K through 12 school, $100K a year.
Yeah, because you have those kids for 15 years, right? And our normal growth rate is somewhere between 4 and 7%. Last year was 7%. We were usually trending a little closer to 4 or 5%. but 7% growth means it doubles every 10 years. Right? And so even if you're a little bit under 7% growth, you're certainly going to double in 15 years, the 15 years that kid from the time they're 3 till the time they're 18. So those kids, those $100,000 a year kids are already born. They're already in our schools. And we're going to be asking their parents to pay $100,000 a year, which is crazy talk. I remember my daughter born in 99, I think. They announced that Harvard tuition, the year she was born, they anticipated her Harvard tuition year to be $100,000. That never happened. So the independent schools have to figure out what the colleges figured out. We have friends whose kids went to a school and the parents went to the same school, and then they went to the same college. And when you go from prep school in the 80s to the Ivy League college, the multiplier was 3x. And now from prep school to Ivy League, the multiplier is 2x. So everybody complains about higher ed growth rate, and we're outpacing them. It's nuts what's happening. And we have to, so part of my job is to use technology, but it's also to find revenue streams, because we either charge the same people more money or charge more people the same money. Those are our two options.
That right there. Okay. So that, I'm going to pause on that.
Yeah.
Charging the same people more money or charging more people the same money. And, I think, there are definitely some people within the audience of this podcast who aren't familiar with independent schools, or aren't even familiar with the pricing models of them, or see this as something that doesn't affect them because it's not their world. Could you, for purposes of this conversation, talk about how this growth rate of tuition in independent schools could potentially affect families who are like, well, it doesn't matter to me because I'm sending my kids to public school. So that's a rich person's problem. Is there a trickle down sort of effect or a domino effect of families being priced out of the independent school world, and how that would affect other school models?
Yeah. So I think firstly, families that make $300,000 a year or less are now in the bracket for who's going to get financial aid in an independent school, right? Not every independent school, right? New York City's prices and Washington D.C.'s prices are different than Topeka or something. There's right. Difference around the country,
or North Carolina to D.C. or L.A. or something like that.
Yeah, and some places like we know that there are Northeastern hedge fund people that are pouring cash donations into Southern Florida because there's not even enough opportunity in the independent schools there to supply for the number of people who want to move there with their families. So yeah, you're going to see all kinds of craziness happen. Another thing that we're fortunate in our area in Saddle River that we have the support of the local government, because they look at us and so in New Jersey, like in some other places, your town may only go K-8, and then you pay for your children in your town to go to a regional high school, and the town pays the tuition to that regional high school. Well, for every kid that goes to Saddle River Day School, the town doesn't have to pay the kid to go to a regional.
Wow.
So if the town thinks about this and the schools work with the town, you can just map out how much money you're saving these kids. We do it with international kids. There's a group called NAFSA, which just does all the international. There's about just over 1 million international kids that come to the U.S. 95% come for college, but some do come for high schools and language schools and stuff like that. They map out in every single congressional district how much money is flowing into that district. And the independent schools, like we always joke, right? Our independence is what gets us. We want to be independent. We not work together. If we worked together to map out how much money we are pulling out of how much money we are saving the public schools because they don't have to educate all the kids that are being privately educated, independently educated, or educated in religious schools, that would
Yeah.
be a huge number for people.
Now that is an interesting take. And that's one of those insights that I wouldn't have thought about, especially the idea of how um, municipalities have to provide for the people who live there, even if they don't have the services there. And in some of the work that I've done in independent schools, there have been examples of that even here in California, where there's some sort of exchange, and it was like during COVID, around like materials that are bought, and that they were bought with certain grants. And so then as a result, the independent school had to provide something similar. I don't remember, I shouldn't even get into this. I don't remember the details of it, but they either had to provide sort of like compensation for the public schools, or provide like the actual hardware for them because of how they receive that money. Before we go too far down that road, I really would love for you to share how you were mitigating some of these challenges with some of not only the technology, because the technology is one thing. It's like everybody has access to technology, or if they don't have access, it is possible to purchase it if you can find the money, but that's only half of the solution. And there's a lot of the work that I've, discussed with you, or I've even seen you do, which is not just about the technology, but it's around the frameworks and the methodology that educators or schools can use to harness that technology. And whether it's to create other revenue streams, which you've hinted at, or even facilitate better instruction. Could you talk through that? And I know that, I'm trying not to say the work that you're doing, but some of the stuff that you're doing, whether it be previously, because you and I, we really connected over within the VR space, and how that could be used within education. We've worked on projects on that space together. But I know that currently you're doing a lot of amazing work with AI to not only augment what teachers are doing, but also to sort of fill that skill gap that you mentioned around preparing kids for the workforce that they're going into, where AI is going to be considered a necessity. And I love that you brought that up, because you and I talk about that all the time. We either don't provide the training, or we call it cheating until you get into a job. Then it becomes productivity.
Yes, right.
All of a sudden it changes. So can you talk through some of the interesting tech work that you're doing, whether it be with the kids that go to Saddle River Day every day, or even some of the international programming that you're doing as well?
Yeah. So I mentioned that I went to India, right, for part of that trip. The other part of the trip was to meet with the people that we were talking about building an AI platform. We could see AI was coming in. We knew it was. We've been around.
This is your second day of work, or your third day of work,
right.
where you're
My
like,
second
we
day,
see this
right,
coming.
Yeah.
All right, let's go to another country and build an AI tool as a school.
Right.
Yeah. Sorry, please continue.
Because what we saw coming was almost what happened 25 years ago, when online platforms started to come into the schools, right? Yep. And so we knew what was going to happen is you're going to have your math teacher was going to use one website, and your English teacher is going to use another one, and the physics teacher is going to use another one. And the kids are going to spend their time trying to figure out which platform they're going to for. So then we created these, like an LMS, back then, and they started to grow in popularity.
LMS, learning management system,
right?
For people who aren't familiar with that term.
Online classes in one place. That's the biggest thing. It creates a digital version of the school, right? One of the advantages of going to school together is being in school together, right? So, and not like, oh, wait, my physics class meets on that corner over there, and my English class meets, 3 blocks down the street and around the corner in the bodega, right? That doesn't happen. So you need to create a virtual version of what works. And so what we wanted was an AI that all our teachers and all our students could use. And we also wanted it to be safe, so that there weren't other people from outside the school coming in, right? That we wanted a fenced in AI area. And so that was what we built up. We built that up in the, we had the developers build it for us, and we worked with them I don't know how many hours we spent on the Zoom calls and in person talking to them, and they sent people over to meet with us at the school, and it was busy time, but it was good. We got closer and closer. We're still like tweaking it,
Right.
Oh, now we need this. I mean, and one of the reasons is because it doesn't exist, right? We need more
Yeah.
companies to kind of see this, but that's another conversation. But now that we see this, and what we can do, like in May, I went to an NGO conference that the UN held in Nairobi, because what we started to realize is what teachers share information with students the same way NGOs share information with their constituents. And that was like, AI can create a course in American history. AI can create a course in, somebody asked me to create a course on why you shouldn't cross the Mediterranean in a small boat. And I was like, okay. So I typed it in, and boom, the AI generates why you shouldn't do this. And then they asked me, they said, oh, but most of the people in my, the constituents of this NGO speak Hausa because they're from northern Nigeria. I'm like,
Right.
I never even heard of that. How do you spell Hausa? And so I typed it, and boom, now I've got the course on why you shouldn't cross the Mediterranean in a small boat in Hausa that I can give to this NGO. So like, I think what we see happening is, and Sal Khan has, his, Khan
Con
Academy,
amigo.
and, everybody and their mom is coming up with an AI agent now. It's just, I've seen so many more that, I don't know how many companies you want me to talk about, but I saw one the other day.
You can talk about as much as you can, because I know there are things that you're working on that you can't talk about. So I want you to talk about whatever you feel comfortable talking about. And I'll interject when needed.
Okay. All right. Yeah. Like I saw like this Pencil Spaces, which is a website that's kind of like a Zoom, but with AI power and a lot more whiteboard. And it was built for tutors, but now there's so much more going in. They don't even have, he told me they don't have OCR, right? They don't recognize the character by character, the handwriting. They take in the whole image so that it's more than OCR, right? That's the capacity of what we're seeing with AI. I know I just signed up for a project with with Meta. They're trying to record all the handwriting of all the languages they can find, every language on the planet that they can find. They want to record this and get this into AI. One of the reasons is, right, with AI. So, okay, if there's a language somewhere where you describe such and such a tree as the tree who gets me to feel better when I have a cough, if that's the name of the tree, when you lose that language, you don't know what that tree does anymore. So that's what AI, and there's different grammar in other languages. I was a terrible French student, but one of those is because I couldn't figure out the grammar. Right? Well, I can't figure out English grammar either, but the blend of all these things is just going to make the AIs better and stronger. And there's so much we should record. And so these are, some of the things that we're working on. And then also you look at your school and what are you doing at your school after 4 and before 8 a.m. And I think this is, AI can assist you, VR can assist you, because you can have all kinds of things happen. We have a parent that came to us and said he needs, his daughter's one of the better tennis players in the US.
Yeah.
But all of her practice time is after school because she's in school, right? So then, and everybody who plays tennis with her is in school at the same time. And they all go, and then they're trying to get on the courts, but the courts are full. And so then charge triple the price. Right. If you can just rent courts, at 12 or 1 in the afternoon. So then we just look at our schedule. Can we take a break can some of our students take a break at 12 and then come back at 4? We all our rooms are open at 4. Those are the kinds of things that we look at. And then the idea of, can we meet in virtual rooms, right? Can we put on a headset, and nowadays you just have to go into a laptop and, it's kind of like Minecraft or something like that.
Right.
It is a 3D space, but it's displayed on a 2D surface.
So, all right, I'm going to interrupt. Finish your thought. Finish your thought, and then I have something.
Everything gets supersized with AI tutors, right? Because you can teach an AI, your AI could be your agent and answer questions just like you were as a teacher 24 hours a day. And, it's just getting crazy. There's VR environments that are integrating AI. There are AI environments that are, integrating all the textbooks. It's everything. The whole world is starting to collide. And you have all these schools sitting on the outside edge. We were talking about the metaphor of riding the wave. These schools are sitting on the edge, and they're not even sure they're going in the water yet. And it's just, it's going to be a really hard wake-up call for them if 10 years from now they're demanding $100,000 and they are just starting to think about some of this stuff.
So, and that point, first of all, there's 15 points that you made in there that were
sorry about that.
Pretty. No, don't apologize. They're inspiring, that are wild. The last thing you just said, school is asking for $100,000 a year, but it is limited to a Socratic method or a chalk and talk where it's like, I'm going to lecture at you. And then parents trying to validate or feel that it's worth the money is going to be a challenge, which I think that we all got a bit of a taste of during COVID with universities, where college professors were doing this over Zoom, and the kids and the families were like, wait a minute, what am I paying for? Because it's one thing when you're in the room with someone and you're exchanging energy, and maybe you can ask a question in a way that means meaningful and it can create a dialogue, which is easier. Like right now, we're on a digital platform and we're doing this one-on-one. Like you're saying stuff and I'm like, oh, and what about this? And what about this? And what about this? But it's harder once you exponentially expand that out to 2 to 6 to 12, if the design of the digital platform and the approach of the teacher doesn't afford the ability to make that connection, which is like a way for me to kind of tie the point of this podcast. What is the ClickPoint where technology and human connection comes together, and how does it show up in different work? And the way you're describing it is wild. And so this leads to my next talking point question for you. You said something to me last week that has stuck with me, and you really hinted at it just now. The idea that AI systems are the new polymaths. And so the point that you just made about being able to ask a question of a teacher 24/7, or even ask an AI, if you're in an NGO, questions about things, whether it be like, oh, it should be in this language, it has to be set up this way. And instead of, and to the detriment of maybe translators or people who have those jobs, who are quickly going to become the elevator operators or the telephone operators who connect physically calls, those jobs are going to go away. To the detriment of them, the access that we have as people, or people who are using these tools, is going to increase greatly. So the question, this is a tricky one that I have for you. With AI becoming the new polymath and creating these avenues to have access to information in this way, but at the same time, you're talking about virtual spaces. Do you have either experience or ideas on how AI systems will be able to create connection either between themselves and users, or between them multiple users who are in a virtual setting? Because that is, I as a parent, I'm sure you went through this as well with your kids, going through COVID, the thing that kids crave the most. It's like, I never thought I'd hear this phrase, I want to be in school. Doing it just online, and whether it be a 2D screen, and it's different if you're doing it in VR because it's still immersive, but the sights, the smells, the touch aspect isn't 100% there. So how do some of these, do you have thoughts on how some of these, even the point of AI being integrated into VR settings, how can some of these digital tools actually help foster meaningful connection and help maintain human connection between people who are doing things virtually? You're an independent school, or you're an international student, you're taking a physics class, and you're based in China, and then and the class, I'm going to say for purposes of simplicity, although this can change, that the entire class is in English. I think there's definitely a pathway where you could have classes where the kid who's in China is hearing it in Mandarin and the kid who's in Maryland is hearing it in English, and they're doing live translation. Like, we know that technology exists. It doesn't exist in these systems yet. But how do you think, what are some of the challenges? How can these systems actually create human connection? Because although you and I think have spent more time connecting digitally because we've always been in different locations. You've been in New Jersey. I was in Memphis. I'm in San Diego. You know what I mean? But when I see you in person, whether it be at a conference or something like that, it just reinforces that bond. How do you think these AI systems can do something similar to that?
That's really interesting. And it made me think. So, the idea that people in general, right? I'm not sure, but I think I remember hearing on Bloomberg that the earnings for the dating apps are starting to fall off, and like people are not online connecting at the rate that they used to. Maybe there's too much fraud in it. I don't know, but maybe they just want to join a running club or meet other people in places. And so some of the people that, we listen to the podcast and stuff like that, they talk about third spaces, right? Kids need third spaces. They need a third space, not just school and their parents' house. They need a third place to go, some place that they can get a connection to other people. I think AI and VR could be the fourth place. I think that you need to connect to your family. You do better when you're connected to your family than living out in the woods by yourself and being raised like Tarzan or something like that. So you need school. But maybe there's some kind of you have a family, and then you have, I think it's this is half big theory of mine, but one of the rises of fraternities and sororities was the fact that people in college needed somebody who was kind of like a family for them, right? And that goes back a couple of decades or more. But what does a secondary school look like? School that's not where I go to. Where do I go to learn? My son, I think he learns more on YouTube than he does in most, of any other place. Certainly from, hanging out. It's not like we sit down and, talk for hours and hours about all kinds of stuff.
He may learn more from YouTube, but what he's doing on YouTube, which has like an AI piece buried in it, what he's learning on YouTube, how does that foster him connecting with other people? It has to be a balance. And this is my opinion. This isn't based upon science. I have zero statistics to back this up. But there has to be a balance between that knowledge acquisition that happens in a digital space, or even that fourth space, and then the connection that happens with people, so that whether you've met I met you originally online. Like, you were in New Jersey, we were presenting together. I was in Memphis. Sanjay from Oasis put us together. He's like, you guys should present together. And we met online. We had a couple meetings, and then we met in person, and then we bonded. And then we went back to being online, and then we met up again in person a couple years later in Vancouver, and then it's just like, we have this thing of doing that, where it's like a large chunk of our interactions will happen either over the phone or in a digital space, like this thing that we're on right now, or Zoom or Roam or something like that. But there's always an anchor of, but I'm going to see you here, or you come out to San Diego.
It's almost like that becomes the in-person becomes the applications portion of this course. The course.
Say that again. Say that again. Say that exact thing again.
This becomes like the application of that that course, that humanity course, the course in how to be a human. We teach kids math, history, all kinds of stuff, and then we teach them applications of it. But we also have to teach them the applications of being a human. Like how do they get that? And this is something that, like, when we started the conversation with the parents at our school, the first thing, well, first we talked to the board, then we talked to the parents, but we told them AI is not coming in to replace the teachers. If anything, we believe that AI is going to double the number of teachers we need at the school. So just be prepared for that. And we're in a nice area, so it's easy enough for us to say, like, this is going to raise the tuition, because we think that it's going to be, it's going to change the dynamic. The reason we think that we're going from, 12, 13 kids per class down to 7 or 8 is because we think that the AI will take care of the background, like the basics and the applications, and the interactions with the teachers will spend more time with the children that will help them apply how to be a better human, take what they know, what they learned from the AI. The AI, can help them with a calculus problem or something like that. But what does it mean? How do you apply that to the real world? It's just like on my last trip, there's a famous calculus problem that talks about the water coming in at a certain rate, and then the water goes out the drain at another rate, and you have to use calculus to figure out. Somebody that built that hotel did not do that calculus problem, because the water that came in was exceeding the rate at which the water was going out the drain in the bottom. And this is like, it's a basic concept, but if you don't teach people how to apply those math problems, then they can screw things up. And then I've got a puddle in the bottom of the shower that is like annoying me while I'm on my, staying at that hotel.
Yeah.
Okay, so I got off on a tangent again.
No. That's a really, really good analogy, even though it's a tangent, because, and I'm going to try to interpret, I want you to tell me if I'm right or wrong. If the knowledge that's coming in through that shower head is not attuned to how you take that knowledge and interact with other people or work with other people, collaborate, build, even connect with other people, then what you have is a dysfunctional feeling. And that water at the bottom of the shower, where it's sort of like, oh, I hate taking a shower because the water is not draining. And then you're not focused on the knowledge coming out, and you're frustrated by the interaction that you're having with the drain. I feel like this is kind of the analogy that you were making by this.
It's like, it's so like funny. Like we don't spend enough time with teaching the applications. And I think one of the things that AI is going to do is afford us the opportunity to spend more time and be better humans. And it will allow us to have a higher quality of work, like work life will be higher quality, but also it'll help us engage those students. My wife teaches kindergarten, and she's like always, they have the empathy, well, why would you hit your friend? That's not nice. Your friend is not going to like that, and tell your friend why you don't want to be hit, right. Those, but we don't do that when they get to high school, it all, and all that is, I saw it, like, it's like such a Nadella's quote, something about innovation is just like, empathy when as it's applied. And like, that's what we need. We need to take the empathy and apply it, and use the innovation, and not get bogged down in the minutia that has been driving us crazy, because we had no other way of getting around it.
All right. So typically you and I would probably go for another hour.
Yeah.
And dig in. I tried this once before with another guest. I'm going to try to close this out just for now. Obviously, I'm going to encourage anyone to follow Kevin, and we'll put his links in, at least on LinkedIn, because Kevin's really sly. He'll throw in these like random things. But if you look at it all together, it's like this like breadcrumb trail to his thought process around things that are interesting, that feel like they're not connected, but they actually are. And the only reason I think I have any inkling of it is that I get to talk to you weekly, where, it's like, oh, and this is something that he said, okay, that's why he's posting this. So I encourage anyone to connect with Kevin, follow him, learn more about the work that he's doing, or if you're lucky enough, just have conversations with him, because it will benefit the work that you're doing across all of these different sort of focuses of this podcast: education, tech, business, the VC world, social impact. Like, we oddly enough touched on all of those, which was great. Like, I have a list of questions and I only asked you like 2. So, which is to me is a perfect interview, because it's not an interview, it's more of a conversation. All right, I'm going to try to do this thing. I did it wrong the first time I did it because I didn't frame the questions properly. I'm going to try to do a speed round with you with 3 questions. I know this is going to be hard for you.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you 3 questions, and you're going to either say yes, meaning it's a good thing or it makes sense, these 2 things together, or no, it's a bad thing, these 2 things don't make sense together. And then I'm going to say why. I'm going to ask you really quickly in like a sentence or 2 just to say why.
Okay.
Where you don't go into detail.
Okay.
Which I know this is a challenge. Are you ready?
All right. Yeah.
I don't know if there's going to be music in here or not. We'll figure that out. If not, it's fine. All right. Number 1, climate and AI. Yes or no?
Yes.
Really quickly. So it's like 30 seconds. Why does climate and AI make sense?
Because we can use AI to solve things that we much faster than we could come up with it on our own, or even in a think tank or something like that.
Now, I would normally ask you more, but I'm going to keep moving.
Okay. Yeah.
That's what makes it a speed round. This one might feel like a softball. Creativity and technology. Yes or no?
Yes.
Why?
I think technology will afford us the time and space we need to be creative.
And I have dissenting thing, but I'm not going to say it. I'm going to keep moving. This is as hard for me as it probably is for you. Because normally it's like, this is like the back and forth.
Right.
This one's a little trickier, and this is the last one. Education and quantum computing. Yes or no?
Yes. I think quantum is going to give us more speed to learn how people learn and improve the process for education.
Once again, Kevin Murgis, sir, thank you so much for coming and just, like I said, as I said before we hit record, just coming and just having the conversation we would normally have. I feel like maybe I talked a little bit less because I didn't want to talk over you today, but this is like the beauty of getting to do this with the people I don't know, is that I get inspired and I get to I get to think of new things. And then also the beauty of having these sort of conversations with people I do know is that I get to be inspired, and also I get to hear their thoughts without wanting to automatically like continue the conversation, but it forces me to reflect on it. So I cannot say it enough. If you're not connected to him on LinkedIn, I don't know, we can talk about this and put this in the show notes, but any other digital space where you share information, that sort of thing.
No, that's the only place I share.
That's the only place. That's the only place. But, and so what we'll do, maybe if you're into it, we'll also put your email out. So people are like, hey, I want to connect with him. Email, Kevin is additive to every single conversation I've ever seen him in or experienced with him. So that's
kind, sir.
No, I'm not. I'm very lucky to know people as bright as you. That's where I'm at. So, the producers always get at me around the time of this. I'm going to cut this one off right now. For those of you who've listened, we really appreciate it. Share it with a friend, whatever the terminology is, smash that like button. And hopefully this was informative for you as it was for me. Thank you guys for listening. And thank you, Kevin, for being here.
Thank you.